But it didn't happen. So what now, Chris?
Well, what did happen was the plan. So the plan's perfectly fulfilled. We've done everything we said we'd do. Maybe most important was the Constituent Assembly at Hyde Park. We did hold this assembly. We agreed the various edicts which had been submitted by the arm wing of the TUC. So the main one was that this unelected, this condemned government is hereby dissolved. The war in Afghanistan is ended. All troops are to come home. The banks are now nationalised. Outfits like Goldman Sachs are under occupation. There's only one bank, the People's Bank, and your nearest branch is your post office. So we went through all these and they're all agreed. So these are law as far as we're concerned, but we've got to implement the law. And we, the people, have to do that. And if some of the edicts aren't quite right, if there's not full consensus, of course, they won't be implemented. So what will be implemented will be whatever we can implement, and we can only implement things from below, which means, there has to be some resonance out there to do these various things. And then the arm wing of the TUC, we had a kind of separate meeting as well, and we agreed the date of the general strike, which is Tuesday, May the 3rd. Again, if that's not supported, it won't happen, but it's kind of an agreed date called, the TUC's called that. I mean, the other TUC doesn't call anything, but the arm wing does stuff, so we've called that, we've made that the date for the general strike, which is great. But the main thing is the wedding, of course. You can't have regime change while you've got the same regime. I mean, it makes no sense. You can't have regime change whilst the main institution which ensures the continuance of the regime, the monarchy, remains. So, the monarchy has got to go, clearly. I mean, it's just by definition, really. So the plan is to contribute to the royal occasion in an appropriate way. So the government of the dead has set out the idea. We've sent out these invitations. The government of the dead requests the pleasure of your company at a right royal orgy. So the sort of theme is that we've paid for this event. We've paid a vast amount of money. We're paying for it, and therefore it's our party. Quite totally different from Saturday, when there's nothing to do with smashing windows, nothing to do with any kind of, violent roadblocks or anything like that. This is what you need for a wedding to be a happy, joyful occasion, and for the couple to be truly blessed. So what we've heard is that the police at the highest level have been ordered to create a sterile zone around the wedding, like a ring of steel, sterilise the whole proceedings, like a ring of sterility around the proceedings. And the point I'm making is that sterility is not what you need for a wedding. What you need is fertility. You need that blessing, and the blessing of fertility comes from us, from the people, and it comes especially from the ribald laughter of the people, all the sexy antics, all the adult humour, if you like. That's what a wedding needs to have, and so we will be dressing up in our finery. We will be trying to outdo the royals. It'll be fancy dress, and of course the idea is that what is royalty? What is a royal state occasion other than, very expensive fancy dress? State, all the funny headdresses, crowns, and carriages and stuff, and people wearing funny costumes and stuff. Well, we can do as well or even better, maybe. But our fancy dress will be explicitly sexy, and it's kind of world turned upside down stuff. It's lunarchy, the moon, basically. The moon turns the world upside down every month if it's doing its job, moving from full to dark, from waxing to waning. And the way we want to do that, I think, obviously everyone's got different ideas, but there's an idea for, because Berlusconi's on the guest list, a Berlusconi bunga bunga contingent, fancy dress contingent. So a big effigy of Berlusconi and all these underage, girls. We'll have a huge guillotine, massive guillotine. I think the main effigy will be a guillotine, which we intend to put on Parliament Square, right next to the Abbey. I'm sure Wills and Kate have got, they must have, mustn't they, the royal family? I mean, they must have a sense of humour. As far as I know, Wills, well, I think he'd be delighted to see his evil uncle, Andrew, the guy that's got this intimate relationship with a convicted sex offender, the guy who's apparently wanted, according to the US press, wanted by the FBI for questioning, because I mean this man has really brought the monarchy into disrepute, Andrew, the Queen's favourite son, and I gather that the condemned ministers have been scratching their head. How do we sack this man as British trade envoy? How do we do it? And he's been told by the Queen, you can't sack him. He hasn't got a job. He's just got a role. So I mean, the thought comes to mind that maybe a guillotine could be useful in cases of this kind. I mean, chop his head off. I mean, there seems to be no other way to sack him. I think that's hilarious. I think Wills would. We must. I mean, he would have to laugh, shouldn't he? Wouldn't he be delighted? Apparently, it's true to say that he does not want to be seen dead in a ditch with his evil uncle. He doesn't want any photographs of him beside Andrew, the Queen's favourite son. And let's remember as well, according to the ministerial briefings, always unattributed, of course, when they've tried to do something about this man's official role at taxpayers' expense to the tune of £500,000 a year as UK trade envoy, which means acting on behalf of, say, BAE Systems, actively, bribing criminals like the Crown Prince of Bahrain and the Saudi royals to equip them with, armoured vehicles and tear gas and God knows what else, I mean, they're now, that lot, Andrew's friends are now in Bahrain, firing live rounds at pro-democracy demonstrators. At the very least, Kate and Wills must be in two minds about all that. So I think it would be a good thing to behead the man using a guillotine, and I think everyone would love that. And don't forget as well, some of those on the guest list are the Crown Prince of Bahrain, the various Saudi royals. Many of those may have been overthrown by the time we get to April the 29th. Let's hope so. So if heads can roll in one part of the world, maybe that'll be a bit of a domino effect, and heads will roll kind of over here as well. So there's that. And I don't know, there'll be one idea I've heard mentioned is a Hieronymus Bosch Garden of Earthly Pleasures block. There'll be a nakedness and blood block. Some hospital workers and people that are not very happy about the cuts might have their arms and legs chopped off and hatchets through their heads and stuff, a kind of zombie action thing, but sexy. And okay, so the idea is, here we are, we've come to have a good time, we've come to give our blessing in hilarity and sexiness, adult humour if you like, and that's what any wedding needs. And yet we're told we're not invited. We're told we will be excluded. There'll be some mechanism to make sure that as we're all camping out overnight along the route with our tents, some of us royals, some of us Republicans, some of us people like myself, I don't know what I'm called, but lunicist is the word I like, they're going to separate out the lunatists and keep the monarchists. How do they do that exactly? But anyway, all I'm saying is if they exclude us with their sterile ring of steel and their snipers on the roof, they're making a big mistake. And I don't mean violence. Witchcraft has nothing to do with violence. I'm simply saying if it's like in the story of Sleeping Beauty, this idiotic king with his 12 golden plates, he decides to exclude the most important guest, the 13th fairy, whose gift is the gift of blood, of fertility. So it's a blessing. And the king rejects it. And he turns it into not just a curse, but the curse. Reject the blessing. You, the state, you turn our blessing into a curse. It's a terrible thing. And again, I'm being a scientist, knowing about these things as an anthropologist, they're really, the court astrologers, again, with all sense of humour, they should be shot. They've chosen the date, the worst possible date for this wedding. It's just before the dead moon. It's the last days of the dying moon. In all the world's mythology, this is the wrong time for a wedding. In all the world's mythology, this is the time just before menstruation. It's not the time for a honeymoon. You don't want to be menstruating, on the honeymoon bed. The time for a wedding is It's just there. Every love song, every fairy story tells you, you know, girls and boys come out to play, the moon does shine as bright as day, honeymoon is full moon. You should have a wedding in the build up to full moon. Having a wedding just before the dead moon, it could not be a worse omen. It could not be more inauspicious. It's terrible. So I'm saying for their own good, really, in terms of all these things, if that couple want to be happy and fertile, cancel this particular date, cancel that particular place, escape, go to some country village church, don't have snipers on the roof, you won't need them, go somewhere, you know, secluded. The royal family got all kinds of country houses, have a lovely time, have a proper wedding. Get away from all this stuff. You don't need snipers on the roof, you don't need to get the taxpayer to pay for, I mean, we've been told, haven't we? No expense spared. That's what the police have been told. Don't spare any expense on this extravaganza, while the bankers have been told to tuck in to the tune of 7 billion for the bonuses they seem to need, and while as a result of all that, you know, lollipop leaders, you know, hospital workers, librarians have been sacked. So instead of suffering all that guilt, why not have a wedding at the expense purely of the royal family itself? They can afford a wedding, a very good wedding. Why come to the taxpayer, just like the bankers, to be bailed out for, on top of all the other stuff we've bailed out these people? I mean, it's provocative. I think to have an extravaganza on that scale in an age of austerity, as we're told, is a provocation to the rest of us. So there will be protests against the wedding. There will be. I want to turn it round and say, we, as opposed to just being consumers of this royal production, we want to be producers of royalty. We will get excluded, I'm pretty confident, unless Kate and Wills decide at the last minute to invite us. But if they do exclude us, as I say, it's not going to look good. And our blessing, the people's blessing, all that laughter, it will be turned into a curse. So we don't even have to. I don't particularly want to curse a lovely young couple. I don't want to do it, but I'm just saying this is going to be done by the state. Turn the blessing of the people into a curse. That's the way things are.
And so you were saying that you have never tried to organise an insurrection before. How's it going?
It's not, well, I think it's going well. I think it's going very well. As I said at the beginning, I think, you know, we should have stayed by Parliament, and we would have been up in orbit